Good morning and welcome to Rising. I said yesterday we would have the greatest show you've ever seen. It was true then, but it's also true today. This one will be even better. Kim is with us here this morning. Robbie,
bright and
as
early.
Always. Yeah. Welcome to you both.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry I missed yesterday's show. I was dealing with some tech issues. We had the internet go down, and of course I can't Skype in without the internet, so I had to miss yesterday's show. But I'm here. I'm making up for it. I'm here for the entire show. It's like 5 o'clock in the morning or something ridiculous here in Los Angeles. But we do have the best show ever for you today. Our Rising panels are going to discuss the media blackout on the bombshell Durham report revealing the lengths the 2016 Clinton campaign went to dig up Russia dirt on Donald Trump. And we're also going to be talking about the tragic killing of Christina Yuna Lee in New York City.
Then Marine veteran and Missouri Senate candidate Lucas Kunce will join us to discuss the latest in the Russia-Ukraine saga. But right now we want to give you an update on the situation at the Canadian border. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act for the first time since the law passed in 1988. Let's take a listen.
The federal government has invoked the Emergencies Act to supplement provincial and territorial capacity to address the blockades and occupations.
The move comes after the now weeks-long trucker protests that have taken over the streets in Ottawa.
The government also took aim at the protesters' finances. Under the Emergencies Act, any truck involved in the protest will have its owner's bank accounts frozen. And after GoFundMe refused to give truckers any of the millions of dollars they raised, the new crowdfunding platform they've gathered funds on, GiveSendGo, went offline. GiveSendGo is said to be offline because of a data breach by a nonprofit whistleblower site that acquired information about donors who gave money to the truckers. This information includes names, emails, addresses, and zip codes, though the data is only available to, quote, journalists and researchers. Here's Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland explaining how the Canadian government is taking aim at all crowdfunding platforms.
First, we are broadening the scope of Canada's anti-money laundering and terrorist financing rules so that they cover crowdfunding platforms and the payment service providers they use. These changes cover all forms of transactions, including digital assets, such as cryptocurrencies.
These harsh tactics on the trucker convoy has led to a major dip in the polls for Justin Trudeau. Turns out just 16% of Canadians said they would vote for Trudeau based on how he's dealt with the truckers. So the poll also found that 53% of Canadians polled said Trudeau looked weak in the face of the threats posed by vaccine mandate protests compared to 31% who disagree. So that's kind of an interesting poll there. So a lot of people are upset about how he's handled the truckers, but it seems like if it's 16%, seems like it's maybe a mixed bag. Like maybe, with these polls, sometimes they never get into the details of exactly why a person's upset. Are they upset because he's cracking down and they feel like that's a violation of the ability to protest the government, or are they upset because they feel like he's not cracking down enough?
Right, and it's a weird question because it asks, would you vote for him based on how he has handled this? And it's like, well, basically nobody, would vote for him based on how he handled this.
Way.
Some people might still support him in spite of how he has handled this. Other people might want him to have cracked down harder. It sounds like those people are about to get their wish. This is a rather dystopian set of sweeping crackdowns that were announced. The idea that you're going to call crowdfunding and lump that in with financing terrorists is just one step away from then criminalizing the act of giving money to a cause that you support. This is it's really clear what's going on here.
It's crazy, and I don't even understand how they're going to with the Bitcoin. What are they? How are they going to? You can't confiscate Bitcoin, right? They're saying that's going to be part of it. Like, I'd like to see you try, but I wouldn't actually like to see them try because they shouldn't do any of this. Please don't try. But this is what it takes to turn Canada into an authoritarian sort of place,
right,
like people not wanting to get forcibly vaccinated.
I never thought Australia would turn into what it turned into.
Right.
So, I mean, I guess, Canada's next. But these are never before used laws. This is one step away from their wartime powers. This is kind of like they had their war powers sort of act. And then this is the next generation of it that they added on to that. And this has actually never been used before. So what they're able to do under these laws is they could do things like travel bans. They can remove people or property from areas. They can fine people. Not sure if they're going to jail people. That isn't clear from what I've looked into. But certainly they're able to call up companies and similar to war power, they're able to then tell companies, you are going to be working for the government now. They could basically tell private companies, you have to do what we say. And that includes maybe removing trucks or whatever the government wants. So it's pretty powerful, and we'll see what happens, I guess. Now, some people are saying this is going to make it worse, that people are going to come out in droves more to support the truckers and to support the protests because they're so upset about the crackdown.
There's an easy way out of this. You just get rid of the mandates.
Right.
Just get rid of them. And then I agree, the truckers should stop blockading roads. Stop doing that, but the mandates should go away.
Right. There's so much ego involved here, because you're right. That's all they would have to do. They could say, look, case counts are on the floor. Like, it's been a very difficult 2 years. Everybody's upset and angry. We understand that. You could even say, look, we were planning on ending these mandates and these restrictions when the pandemic ended, which, good Lord, I hope they were. Because if they weren't, then the truckers are right about their
temporary
craziest,
emergency powers end up being kind of sticky.
And so if they're temporary, say, hey, look, the case counts are low. We're easing this stuff now. You then have eased the restrictions. The public is happy about that. And you then have also completely drained support from kind of the mass mobilization behind the truckers. You'd still have some diehard truckers who weren't actually there for the mandates. They're there for other sorts of fringe things. But then you have a couple hundred people at most, and they lose complete public support. But no, the government can't just admit any weakness whatsoever, and so they're just gonna. They just dig in, and then they're going to try to crack down.
I don't know if they really can. I mean, Canada's in an extra tough position at this point because these protests have spread around the world now. So this isn't just, and I am actually going to talk about this on my radar tomorrow. I'll go through more of the protests and how they have spread. But, now we're looking at the same sort of convoy protests in Israel, Netherlands, New Zealand, Belgium, Australia. I mean, they're all over the place now. So I think maybe the Canadians are thinking, the Canadian government, the Trudeau government is thinking, okay, if we cave and if we say, all right, fine, we were planning on lifting the mandates anyway, but, so it's not you. We were already going to decide this. It still sets the precedent potentially. I mean, they might be worried that, oh no, then now all of these other governments are going to lose control over the people. But that's then the big question that needs to be asked. And I think that's the big question that many of us should be upset about. We should be alarmed by, which is, who is in control of our country? Is it the government or is it the people? And if they're not willing to cave to the wishes of the people, then what is the government? Are they just this power to exert over us, and we have to do what they say no matter what, and they can't negotiate with us because they view us as we, the people, as terrorists? Because that's what it's looking like.
Well, this is why the government needs to be constrained significantly at all times, especially in matters of free speech and civil liberties. And I mean, I would say the government should also be small, so small maybe it practically doesn't even exist, but we're not going to agree on that. But it should at the very least be significantly constrained. I mean, that's the advantage the United States has had over some of these other countries, in that the First Amendment, the Bill of Rights more generally, protects our protesting rights very, very strongly and very significantly. I mean, like Biden's kind of universal vaccine mandate, not totally universal, but very far-reaching vaccine mandate, that gets struck down in a couple weeks by the Supreme Court because we have a kind of more robust tradition of the government can't just do whatever it wants. I think we also have the Federation helps us. A lot of these governments are able to kind of have a wide-sweeping federal government. And people when Trump was president, people were saying, "Oh, can Trump shut down the government? Can Trump shut down the government?" It was like, no, Trump can't. There's states. The governors have to do it. Right.
So there's a bit more power on the state level than what some of these other countries have.
Yeah, and we've been obviously we're 50 states, and each state has been able to experiment with somewhat different COVID
Right.
policies at various stages. And, you can kind of, you can move into the, right, you can associate yourself with the state that has the policies that best fits, what you want.
Right.
I mean, it's a pain, obviously, to move, but a lot of people have. A lot of people have left
A lot of people are doing
California,
it,
New
yeah.
York, gone to Texas, gone to Florida, because they like those policies better. And, that's not ideal. Obviously, you want the policies to be just what you want them to be where you are, but you do have that option,
Right.
and that's fine, too.
And Kim, to your point about, well, what if this sets a precedent for these other countries around the world? I say fine. All of these countries claimed that these are temporary restrictions that they're putting in place for the pandemic, and all of them could point to plummeting case numbers
Right.
and say, look, we're going back to normal now.
Why wouldn't we go back to normal now? It's over. It's ending. It finally is. Everybody got it. Everybody who wants to get
Almost
vaccinated.
everybody.
So many people have gotten vaccinated. They can get vaccinated more if they want to. Let's move on.
Yeah.
It's time.
Well, not everybody's ready, apparently.
I guess. And
Apparently
if if they're not
governments-
ready, if you still want to wear 18 layers of masks and seclude yourself in your house, homeschool your children, fine, that's fine. But you
By all
cannot
means,
force that
right.
choice on other people, forever. You just can't do it. I mean, you can't weaponize the government against citizens to do that. So I understand the frustration, and it's time to end it, end those mandates. All right, well, we'll tell you what's on our radars coming up next.